and welcome to episode 43 of It's Never Sunny in Seattle, a Seattle Mariners podcast. I'm your host today, Evan James, joined by Michael Ahedo and Anders Jorstad. And today is pretty exciting because we get to talk about the Mariners being offensive juggernauts. And I've been around a long time. I'm 32 years old, been a Mariners fan my entire life. I haven't gotten to talk about the Mariners being offensively talented in what feels like 20 years. So I'm going to pitch it over to Durs first. How exciting is it that we lead the league in WRC plus in base on ball percentage and in total offensive WAR? This is awesome.
Based on ball percentage, what are you, a 1903 sports writer? Come on, man. No, I will say, so yesterday, it was an off day on Monday. So I was like, what do I do without baseball? Because the Mariners have been so exciting. Like, what am I supposed to do with myself? So I rewatched the entire history of the Seattle Mariners documentary, which is 4 hours long.
Oh, I have seen that. It's really good. It's really
I hope
good.
you've seen it. Yeah, Mikey, what'd you say?
Which one? Dorktown?
The secret base one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
Dorktown. Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, I rewatched it yesterday, and it just made me like so emotional and like so ready for like the Mariners to be good again. And I say that to say I didn't really think about how like pointless the last, especially 15 years of Mariners baseball really has been. Like we have had some fun storylines here and there, but like it just kind of feels like we've been floundering in mediocrity for so long. And maybe we're going to do that again this year. I mean, we've been to hot starts, we've had playoff runs, down the stretch. Last year, obviously, being like the most recent one. I'm just ready for them to be like a fun team again, and I don't know if I'm ready to like expose myself to that. And I don't know if I'm ready to like embrace this team as like an offensive juggernaut, because I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop. But I do get like the feeling around it is okay. So there are players who are overperforming right now. Like France is not going to hit like he's hitting right now for the whole season. Neither is JP, but Winker's not going to be this bad all year. Hopefully Julio and Kelenic, and we'll get to them, I'm sure, won't be this bad all year. So there's definitely like regression coming on both sides, and it's just more of like which side of the scale is it going to weigh more towards. And if they have like a top 10 offense in baseball, that's phenomenal. Even if they have like a top half, I think that's obviously an improvement from last year. And it's just so refreshing to not like, there's no at bat I feel like we're giving away by having a guy at the plate. Like even when Cal Raleigh comes to the plate, and he's probably the worst hitter who's getting regular ABs on this team, even when he comes to the plate, I'm like, oh, there's a chance he could poke a single, or he could, hit a double down the line. I don't feel like, oh God, here goes the rally, So that's been very refreshing to feel.
Mikey, the Mariners offense, fool's gold, or are you all in?
I can't agree with either of those things. I think they are legitimate, but like Durs talks about, like, there are 3 hitters who are above average right now. They're just way above average. Like it's France, JP, and Eugenio Suarez who are really carrying the team. I mean, Frazier's like been a league average hitter, and I think that's been valuable. I think his approach has been valuable and will be valuable, and I tend to think that he'll get hotter over the course of the year. One thing that I'm kind of thinking about is like Winker has struggled so much, and we've talked a lot about how much bad luck he's had, and I think part of that is the ball. He's hit the ball really hard, but we have the humidor. I think they're exclusively going with the 2021 ball that was kind of the deadened ball, so the results have been kind of doubled. Whereas in 2021 they had 2 balls that were circulating. So I don't know. I think we're either going to see Kelenic improve or him go down and be replaced. I do expect Julio to be somewhere around, league average bat moving forward. And I think that Ty France is legit. Um, he's basically doing what we always thought that he would do, which is, just hit. It's like the Stephen Romero thing, except, he's actually doing it.
What an
So
unflattering
I
comparison.
know, but it's it's just it's a thing that we say about players that don't have a position, and that might not look like Giancarlo Stanton. Like if you saw Ty France walking down the street, you'd be like, yeah, that dude is just a dude. um, but I'm interested also in JP Crawford. Like, is this real? I was looking into it a little bit, just like his rolling graphs and his numbers, and he's never done this before, not like this. So I'm pretty interested in why this is happening.
I feel like there's a lot of players, and you just listed a lot of players that we could like really dive in on, and I have things to say about all of them. So, Mikey, why don't you pick one player, and we can talk a little bit more about them.
Well, why don't we go with JP?
Okay. So famously in the Lookout Landing channel, I became the anti JP guy, kind of. Not intentionally, but I became kind of a hater last year. It was around July. We were talking about like potential All-Star selections for the Mariners, and people were saying, "Oh, JP Crawford should be the team's All-Star." And I was just lamenting how boring of an All-Star JP Crawford would be. I was like, "This is a guy who's like a dime a dozen. Like he's so unexciting. He kind of just is a guy. He doesn't do anything flashy. And now this year, he's just like absolutely amazing, and I'm being forced to admit that he's a good player. And I don't think he's a great player, but I think he's, a solid contributor. Obviously, he, plays fantastic defense. He's won a Gold Glove, so that's, we have that, but his metrics are really strong right now in terms of hitting too. 91st percentile xWOBA, 96th percentile xBA, 100 percentile K percentage. He is not striking out, and he's walking a ton too. And I don't think he's going to walk more than he strikes out for the rest of the year. But if he can keep those two even like close to each other, he doesn't have to be a big power bat to be a plus hitter. And that's why I think he's batting in the heart of the order right now. Well, that and because Haneker's out and Julio isn't hitting yet, but I think Crawford will ultimately settle into like maybe the 6-7 spot. And I think that's fine, but he's, proving that contract extension was the right decision by the team. And also the decision to not sign like, one of those marquee free agents. He's got a better WRC plus than all of the free agents that they could have signed, although it's been 2 weeks.
I've been thinking a lot about that lately. Because I didn't think that was necessarily a good decision. But I think one way we can kind of look at more descriptively than predictively, but like, is this deserved? And oh my God, something just came up in this search query that is not ideal, but is like looking
at
the
same thing I saw with his defense.
No, although yeah, it's another Mariners hitter that shows up very, very not good. But launch angle tightness correlates with BABIP, and if he, is hitting the ball at really consistently, basically, that would mean that this is probably deserved. And I'm scrolling, and I have yet to. Why don't I just type his name in? But I mean, and I'm gonna do this like sort of live. Oh yeah, like it's not great. So if nothing's changed, it's like, why believe in this? His launch angle tightness is or SDLA is about 32 degrees, which is who are some hitters by him? Toro. Shohei.
Pretty good. Good company.
So basically, like in terms of launch angle tightness, he's in the same vicinity as elite power hitters, but without the power. That's not ideal at all. So yeah, unless we really find something like, I mean, I think sweet spot percentage kind of gets at a similar thing that he's doing well. I think that we can expect him to fall back to being a league average hitter, which is what the projections say. Um, I was encouraged in looking. I just was on my phone the other day and looking over it, looking at some of his metrics. But in looking now, I'm like, maybe this isn't real.
Well, I really am more interested in the plate discipline stuff because that to me is a skill he can potentially hold over. I don't think he's ever going to be a power hitter. So like, the 2 home runs, that's not going to stick. But, if he can continue to draw walks and avoid strikeouts, he can run a high average just because he's going to get good pitches to hit.
Yeah, he's pulling the ball more than ever. He's also hitting the ball weakly more than ever.
Yeah.
That is his trademark.
And hitting more line drives, which generally speaking is not a sustainable trait. Yeah, I would believe in in the plate discipline, and part of it is that he is seeing more breaking stuff. He is seeing fewer pitches in the zone, which I don't know why. I don't know why pitchers would make that adjustment. But yeah, he is swinging less, and which coincides with seeing the ball in the zone more. So I think maybe as pitchers adjust back and start pounding the zone again, we see kind of a regression or reversion.
I have a question for you, Mikey. Do you know if errors are counted in outs above average?
I doubt it because that's well, and let me look it up. But as far as I know, OAA is more so looking at the it's like a range based metric.
Right, it's like foot speed, right?
Well, it's just it's looking at like objective data. And so it's looking at like the the probability that like you make a catch and like if you made it and like etc. Let's see.
The reason I ask is because he's in the first percentile in outs above average. The bad end of the first percentile.
Yeah, that's really not good. So like I said, it's objective. I guess the 4 things that it looks at are how far the fielder has to go. So, they call it the intercept point. How much time he has to get there, how far he then is from the base the runner is heading to, and then on force plays, how fast the batter is on average. So some of it does seem kind of, even though it is objective data, this probably takes a while to become reliable still.
Mm-hmm. We're looking at some inherent weirdness in that just up front because he had the game in the hurricane and then also the game in the rain. So there's been 2 like weird instances where he recorded errors. He's also had just some uncharacteristic errors in general so far this season, but he's on the flip side of it, he's hit better than he's ever hit before and has 2 home runs. So we're seeing this weird version of him that we're not used to, but it kind of does add up to something similar to what he did last year, right? Like it's not wholly out of character. It's just not how any of us would have guessed he would have gotten to this point so far. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. It is so strange. Like you feel pretty good. Like you can just picture in your head, like when he comes up to the plate, like regardless of who he's facing, even if it's like a lefty, you can kind of just envision him like poking one to left center, just like a little bloop single. Mm-hmm. He makes contact and he doesn't strike out an overwhelming amount. A league average hitter, excuse me, and JP Crawford is a pretty valuable player. That's probably a 3 to 4 win player. So it makes sense. Like why would you go out and get a shortstop and replace him when that's your when that's the case?
Evan, who else would you like us to touch on next?
Let's talk about Ty France, because I know I saw you were jumping at wanting to talk about Ty France, but also because John Troopin did an article on Lookout Landing this week, and also you said there was an article on Fangraphs as well, digging into him. He's had probably the hottest start, not just of any Mariner in years, but of any player so far in the sport. Basically, he's just been a monster at the plate, batting. His WRC plus is 235, so he's 135% better than league average. Durs, what have you seen from Ty France? And you can bring us through a little bit of John's article and the Fangraphs article, but give us both the detailed look and just kind of let us know how you think he's just been in general, because he's kind of an interesting archetype, and his story for how he got to the Mariners and the role he's occupying is kind of unique.
Yeah, both John and Jake Mailhot at Fangraphs were pointing out that basically, France has been doing this for years. He's been hitting to this degree throughout the minors, and that one of the big reasons why he became available, first of all, is like a 32nd rounder at San Diego State. He was injured. And then because he became available via trade, because nobody believed that what he was doing at AAA in 2019 was believable, because that was like the rabbit ball year in AAA when like the lowest ERAs were like 4s and 5s.
Mm-hmm.
So him hitting like 372 with like a 720 slugging percentage was like, okay, whatever. Like it was more a demonstration. I think it was Jake who said this. Like it was more a demonstration of like, look how bad this ball is, because even utility, tweeners are tearing the cover off the ball, and they kind of disrespected France in the analysis. And the Mariners were the ones that were, the believers and thought maybe this could be real.
Mm-hmm.
And so it seems like so far, he's proving that it is real. It's more or less the same as what he has always done. And I'm not sure he's going to be like a power bat. I don't think he's going to be like a 35 homer guy throughout his career, but he could hit 30 to 35 this year, especially with the pace that he's setting himself on.
Mm-hmm.
The big problem with both him and Winker is that they both are positionless, I should say, but France has found a home at first, and Winker's not good defensively. So those two guys both have to be good hitters for them to have value. So for France, he's definitely proving that value. And the pressure's kind of on him to continue to do that, because even if he should have won a Gold Glove last year, I don't know how repeatable that is. Like we said, OAA is kind of unpredictable at this point. There's a few Gold Glovers who are like in the negatives already. Yuli Gurriel, Paul Goldschmidt, France. They're all like -1, -2. So that's probably not predictive of anything. But I do think that what France is doing is potentially sustainable. And Jake also pointed out that like one thing that France is known for, and this is what makes him such a good hitter, is that he knows how to spray the ball to all over the field.
Mm-hmm.
If he's in a 2-strike count, he's not trying to swing for the fences. He knows how to like take an outside pitch and poke it the other way. And that the reason that he keeps getting hit by pitches is because the scouting report is that you throw him up and in, and so if you miss up and in by a little bit, you hit him. So it's not so much like, oh, they're trying to hit Ty France. It's just like the scouting report is telling them, like, if you are trying to get a ball past France, because he's so good at covering the strike zone, the only weakness he has is up and inside. So the only thing I worry about with France is him staying healthy. And I'm just like waiting for him to like, get hit in the hand real bad, and he'll be out for a couple weeks, and that's a lingering issue. And even when he's on the field, he's going to be sapped of his power. Like,
You better knock on
I'm
some
enjoying
fucking wood.
Yeah, I know, man.
I swear to
But
God.
that's just like I can just see that happening, and I'm just like, I'm thankful for what we have right now, but I'm worried a little bit for the future.
It's kind of the same thing where you want to see something that really matters that's changed. And to me, when I pour over his data, his hard hit percentage has gone up a little bit. And again, like it's early. We're 66 batted ball events, and at least through Chamberlain's leaderboard. Like his dynamic hard hit percentage has gone up a little bit too. The launch angle tightness is pretty much the same. Although I kind of wonder, I don't know. The thing is, there are many ways to take a step forward as a hitter. One is just to hit the ball more consistently. Like there you have a certain amount of batted balls. Like, duh. Um, a percentage of those are going to be hit weekly, and the league average is 3.7%. A percentage, they have different classifications. So like topped, you're hitting over the top of it. Under, you're really getting under it. Flares and burners, which are kind of the JP special I was just talking about, where you just dink one right over the infielder into right or left. And then solid or barreled balls. It kind of seems like right now France, like, he's not barreling the ball that much more. Like, he is, and maybe that matters. But right now, like, he has yet to hit a ball that's categorized under like weak. And so I kind of wonder, once that inevitable regression takes place, like, he's also barely gotten under any balls. He has topped balls less than he has in the past. Once that inevitable regression takes place, because it's going to some extent, what's kind of the carrying trait? Like, is he going to keep barreling baseballs a couple percentage points higher than he has been? Like, I don't know. But even then, uh, he doesn't hit the ball that hard. Like, he's not a Shohei, he's not a Trout. His numbers don't jump off the page. So I think, kind of, I mean, and this is really kind of what John and Jake said, but I think if France is to become this hitter, it's the flare / burner category. It's just kind of spraying the ball over the field, which is what he's done this year. But he has a 43% percentage, whereas his career is 30 and the league average is 24%. I don't know how sustainable that is. And maybe it does work. I mean, I was just watching the broadcast the other day, and they talked about how there was a pitch that really, like, he could have just pulled down the line. Actually, this was on MLB Network. He could have just pulled down the line, but he really, like, kept his swing true through the zone and sent it to left center field. That is kind of indicative of that skill where, maybe he is taking what he can take. Maybe he is taking what is given to him and just dumping it everywhere. And I think that is, a kind of representative of a good hitter. But this seems very extreme. And obviously his numbers are very extreme, so he has a lot of room to regress or revert. But it does make me a little bit nervous that, like, he's also hitting a lot of line drives right now, and that's not a very sustainable skill. Like, that's pretty much the easiest thing to be like, oh, his line drive percentage is 37.5. His career average is 27.5. The league average is 25. That's going to fall to like 30. So I believe in Ty France. I believe that this is real. I don't know how real it is.
I was thinking about this today, that he's 27 years old. He has 3 more years of team control. How long do you think until the Mariners consider giving him like a similar to the JP extension? They could, if they give him 5 years, they'd lock him up through his age 33 season. That seems like something that the team would want to do. And if they get out in front of it enough, they can probably get those to be fairly team friendly for the team. And also, it's a good show of faith again, just like it was with JP, that, like, you play well here, you'll be rewarded. I kind of wonder if that's like a smart move for the team to make if they're still playing like this, or if he's still playing like this in like July or August.
I would hesitate to do that during the year. I think that they will probably look at extending him in the offseason, especially because we're going to have more clarity about what on earth Evan White is and if he's ever playing again. Not that that really has any bearing on this, just that they do technically already have a first baseman signed long term. and we need clarity on whether or not he's ever going to return to that position. Because at the current moment, the short answer is maybe, right? He just had this surgery, but he's scheduled to come back to baseball activity in relatively short order. We might have him for the second half of the season. I think they can let that play out much the same way that they didn't really sign JP until spring training. I think that they can wait a little bit on signing Ty France. But I think we should pivot. We talked about the two guys who are probably overperforming and hitting the best on the Mariners right now. I think we should talk about the kids because A, they're the most exciting and they're the ones we like the best. But B, there are some legitimate concerns in particular about Jarred. We talked about Jarred before the podcast. We've been sparing a little bit about Jarred over the last couple of days. I, in particular, have been watching Jarred like a hawk for the past week. I've watched every single at bat, every single pitch he's taken. I've been rooting so hard for him to come through, and he's had moments with the bases loaded, with runners on, late in games, where he could have walked it off. Nothing, man, just nothing. I'm feeling a little bit of despair about it, honestly, but I want to ask both you guys, but let me kick it over to Durs first. What have you seen from Jarred? Because you mentioned a little bit that his swing decisions still appear to be good, which I think is in line with what the team has said. My read is that he's getting fooled really bad. Even if he's picking the correct pitches to swing at, he is getting mentally and physically outplayed by major league pitchers at this point. What would you say to that?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that he's just like swinging through pitches, right? Like I remember the most recent at bat that he had on Sunday when there were runners on base, maybe bases loaded, and he just like swung through a couple of fastballs, and that's just kind of how his at bats have been. I feel like we're just willing him to be good, that every time he gets a single or a double, it's like celebrated extra compared to other hitters that would do the same. Because I think we're all just like desperately looking for signs of improvement. And I've noticed this in the broadcast for both Julio and Jarred. I think it was during the broadcast, like that Julio was hitting, they said Julio like hitting 258 over his last like 5 games. And I'm like, that's really not much to brag about. Like, are we really so desperate for like a player to be hitting, for these players to be hitting well, that we're just like picking out 6-game samples? Like, that's really not what we should be doing. But when it comes to Jarred, he is chasing a little bit more than I would like, but more than that, I'm worried about his timing, because he's just behind everything. He's swinging through fastballs. He's just like flat out not making contact, and those are skills that can improve. Ty France had a similar problem. Obviously Jarred is much younger now than France was then, but we can't sit around and wait like 3 years for Kelenic to break out. That's the biggest problem. When everyone makes those age comparisons, like there's a lot of pressure on Kelenic to be good like this year or next year.
Mm-hmm.
And if
you don't
he is
get
this year,
forever to flounder. Like I think
Yeah.
that people forget that no matter how young he is, and he is very young, you don't get 2,000 plate appearances to not be good in the major leagues. Like, and he's already
Yeah.
approaching 500 rapidly, and so far not so good.
Yeah, so I'm much more concerned about Jarred than I am about Julio, and we'll get to that in a bit, I'm sure. But when it comes to Jarred, I posited the possibility that like when Haniger comes back from the COVID IL, which is any day now, like I wonder if they send Jarred down, and I don't think they will, because then that means you're carrying Donovan Walton on the roster. I think it would be different if they had someone like Taylor Trammell waiting, but he's been hurt. But if they had someone like Trammell to bring up, I think that would be like, they did this last year with Trammell and Jarred. They they played musical chairs with those two. But there's nobody really in AAA to be like ready to go. If Zach Deloach was like in Tacoma tearing the cover off the ball, it'd be another story. But that's not a thing. So I think they just have to let Jarred figure it out, and we have to just wait and see if he's going to. But if it comes to be like July, August, like you definitely have to send him down at that point. And I feel like they probably will before that.
Mikey, I know you've been digging into the numbers. What are you seeing from Jarred?
I mean, one of the first things is, whether you look at swinging strike percentage or whiffs per swing, he's he's Mike Zunino-esque. Which, like, it's early and there are numbers on this leaderboard that aren't the worst. Like Chris Taylor's number 1 in whiffs per swing. and not great by swinging strike percentage. So it's not like, I mean, Joey Votto's here too, which I guess he's old as hell, and I don't think has been very good.
He
So
he tinkers too, so it's a bad comparison because Joey Votto's always trying to mess with his swing.
yeah, and so that's not the end all, be all. But he also has the second worst launch angle tightness on this leaderboard, and it's like it's a number I haven't seen before. It's 40 degrees. um which, I mean, isn't surprising. He has 36 batted balls, and most of them haven't been very good. But to speak to Durr's point, I think it's a timing thing. It doesn't seem like a matter of discipline and chasing, and he has chased, but um I think a lot of it is timing based. um and I talked a lot about this at the end of last year, and I know that Joe Doyle has as well, but every hitter has a timing mechanism, obviously. uh some guys have a big leg kick like Kyle Lewis, or Mitch Haniger has really big timing mechanisms. Some guys are smaller, like, I don't know, Ben Gamel has more of like a timing step. Um, and I think one of the things that helped Jarred get his timing right last year was, and I talk about this a lot, and maybe I'm full of shit, but it's a lot of pre-pitch movement in his hands, where he's kind of alternating, kind of like Mitch Haniger, but alternating between like having the bat on his shoulder parallel to the ground, to it being like perpendicular and like vertical. So basically just like getting movement in his hands. And I think what that helped him do is, he talked about how his like angle, like he was just seeing the ball better when he was more upright than that weird little slouch and little like rock that he had. But I think the movement is a timing mechanism that helps sync up his upper and lower half, and when those are in sync, he times the ball up really well, and he gets the barrel on the ball, and he hits the ball hard. Um, and so he's gone through several different kind of stances at the plate. I don't know why he's gone away from that. Maybe it's not comfortable for him, but he needs to find something comfortable where he is able to time the ball up, and right now he's obviously not able to do that. um there are also things like where your different body parts are, when you get into your swing, and how you transfer energy, and the angle that your hands and the barrel are taking to the ball, how much time the barrel is spending through the zone, whatever. But right now, I think it's about making quality contact, and I think he can probably do that just through timing it up better. And the more that he does that, the more he'll get out of his head. So that's the thing that I look for now, is like, oh, he has a new stance, great. Like, does he have some good pre-pitch movement? Is he syncing up his upper and lower half? And a lot of the time it doesn't feel like that.
I will say I would rather him have this timing issue than him having a chasing issue, because this is the kind of thing where he's like an adjustment away from fixing it. We just don't know
Mm-hmm.
when he's going to make that adjustment, or if he's going to make that adjustment. But it seems like it's a lot easier for him to just like, oh, he made a tweak to his swing and it clicked. So that's why I feel like this is still promising. And obviously he is still chasing. So I think he always will kind of have a strikeout percentage in like the mid to high 20s. But if he's hitting the shit out of the ball and he's hitting 260, I don't think people are going to care so much.
Mm-hmm.
His EVs have still been really good. So like when he's able to connect, he's made a lot of noise. The skills are there.
His chase percentage is Brantley-esque, Adam Frazier-esque. Votto-esque. So those are good signs. It's better than Julio's. So yeah, to speak to the plate discipline.
I'm going to dissent a little bit real quick. And I love the analysis. I'm really glad we talked about this because I think you both had wonderful things to say. And I agree with you guys both, like, kind of in a nutshell. Having watched Jarred so closely, I think I'm not entirely convinced his issue is mechanical, strictly speaking. I agree that it's a timing thing. But when I watch him take fastballs right down the plate and then make a swing decision on what it appears that he thinks he's getting a fastball and he gets something off speed and is just fouling it off. He's guessing wrong. I don't know how else to phrase it. And yes, that is, the timing is a symptom of that. But I've watched him seemingly get outplayed by major league pitchers. You know what I mean? Like when Felix was at his best, it wasn't that he was gunning it by guys at 98. It's that he had 5 pitches and they couldn't guess with any certainty what was coming their way or where it was going to be. Um, Jarred doesn't seem to have a clue right now. And it worries me because I don't think he can fix this in AAA. I think he has to fix this here, and it's spiraling on him a little bit. And that's why I'm concerned. And that's why, I think Durs was there when I despaired a little bit in the Slack the other day about it and about sending him down. I don't know what to do. He has to hit his way out of this. What do you guys think of that?
Yeah, I agree. I don't really know. The only thing that setting him down in AAA would fix is the confidence issue, which I think he
Mm-hmm.
also has. Is that
Yes.
he just, and you kind of just alluded to this, he just looks overmatched. He looks lost at the plate, and he's just frustrated all the time, and that's kind of just his personality. Like he's a very competitive guy.
Mhm.
And Julio is too, but they're competitive in different ways. Where I think Julio is more of the shake it off and move on, and Jarred is more like obsessively trying to analyze, what went wrong. Um, and that's, that can be a damaging way to think of things. I will say, when he's in the outfield, he looks super super happy. He's playing very well in right field. The eye test matches the stats that he's a plus right fielder. I hope that they keep him out there even when Haniger comes back. I don't know what they would do with Haniger. Maybe throw him in left, cycle him around a little bit. But it seems like he's very comfortable in right field. So,
Mhm.
in terms of that, I feel like he's playing well out there. But yeah, when he's hitting, it is very concerning. I'm just waiting for him to make that change, I suppose.
I wonder if he just needs to be more aggressive. Because he's always hit fastballs well. He hit fastballs well last year. He's continued to hit fastballs well this year. You're going to get more fastballs in later or breaking and off speed stuff and later counts. His first pitch swing percentage right now is 5%, which is about half of what the average is
And
for
for
him
the
in
record,
2021 and
I
in
believe both
MLB.
of his home runs were on first pitch fastballs. I know the first one was. I don't remember the second one precisely, but I'm pretty sure both of his home runs have been on first pitch swings. So yeah, I would totally.
Um, yeah, and I mean the breaking and off speed issue it seems like a pretty big issue. Um, you can be a fastball destroyer and only be able to hit them and be a good hitter, but you usually have to be somewhat of a well-rounded hitter and somewhere around, you know, average, below average when it comes to breaking and off speed stuff. Uh, but I mean that's where the most of his troubles are coming on right now. Um, and so maybe he is just getting fooled, like you're saying, Evan. But I do think that, I mean, I don't think it's one issue, but I think that what we've seen uh, be the most successful for him is finding, a setup that works well for him, and he had 2 to 4 weeks of success, you know, in September. So I don't know.
I will say that it's additionally a little bit concerning that the Mariners just played a bunch of pretty bad pitchers and he didn't feast on those guys the way that someone
Yeah.
like France did. Like they were playing the Rangers and the Royals, and the guys that they were throwing out there were like number 4 starters, number 5 starters. So, I don't know how he's going to fare when he's facing off against, the elite of the American League. And I guess nobody faces well against them, but like you have to at least, hold your own. And I feel like if you can't crush those number 4 starters, it's a little bit concerning.
Yeah, there was definitely multiple opportunities for him to feast over the last couple of series, and he did not. And I think that's part of where like the extra despair at this exact moment is coming from. Is I saw him come up with the bases loaded in the 7th inning in back-to-back games and strike out, and it's hard because I want him to be successful so bad. But let's pivot to somebody I do feel very optimistic about, which is Julio. And Julio had the roughest transition that I think anyone really expected. But I'm going to be honest. I like what I've seen from him at the plate over the past couple series. I don't think his numbers have come all the way up the way that we might hope for. But his batting eye is dynamite, even when he's getting called out by racist umpires. Like his eye is incredible. Every strike that was really not a strike that got thrown to him was just like a little bit off the plate. They were bad calls, but they weren't like otherworldly indefensible. They were off the plate, but it was close. He looks really good. He's hit a few more line drives recently. The exit velocity is still way, way up there. And above all this, he's looked great in the field, right? Like the speed is showing up on defense. He's made all the plays that have come his way, and he's made a couple of plays that I wasn't sure if he would make, kind of like max range plays. So, Mikey, what do the numbers say about his start at the plate over especially the last couple of games where he started to heat up? But how's the defense looking from a metric perspective so far?
It's I think especially for hitters, like for pitchers, it's pretty easy to go game by game and be like, well, his fastball velo is ticking up or his pitch usage is changing. For hitters, it takes a while for a lot of numbers to become reliable or credible, and so it's tough to be able to say like legitimately how how good has he been, or how's he trending. But what I will say is, like, in terms of the athletic skills, the things that are the most meaningful right away for young players are the maxes. So for pitchers, for Matt Brash, it's like, how hard is he throwing? Because especially for like young prospects, however hard that they throw at their highest means that's their potential. And so Julio, his max exit velo is really good. His sprint speed is 99th percentile. And his fielding looks pretty good too. I mean, not only like the eye test, but he does have a +1 OAA right now, which isn't insignificant. I mean, 41 attempts. It's I think it probably becomes reliable for outfielders much faster than infielders. Yeah, I've been really impressed by the plate discipline. Like Jarred, he hasn't been swinging in early counts or on the first pitch as much as maybe he should, because that's when you'll get a fastball and maybe a meatball. And he has been swinging through pitches, but it seems like that's been less. It seems like that's been happening less over time. So, I mean, yeah, his numbers are ticking up. When you look at his batted ball numbers and everything, and he's starting to strike out less too. Which, like, that's more so going from mid 40s to like 30s, like low 30s, but that's an improvement nonetheless. So, I don't know. He just seems so mature for his age. It's wild, and I am. It's kind of weird. Like, Jared's skill set is the one where it's like, in terms of the bat, the skills are, the floor should be higher, but that hasn't been the case.
Yeah, just like watching Julio take that ball forward with the bases loaded was such like a cool thing to see, specifically because it was a borderline pitch, and he's been getting squeezed all week. And yet he like had the confidence to take that pitch. And he said in interviews a couple of times, like in response to, the questions about whether he's frustrated with the calls, that like, first of all, he can't do anything about it, and that he knows it'll come around, and that he knows that trying to change what he's doing in reaction to it is actually counterproductive, which is a super mature mindset to have, especially at how young he is, to know that, like, if I try to do something to fix this, it's going to be worse for me in the long run. So I'm just going to keep doing me, and it'll all sort itself out. So that's been super cool to see. Like you mentioned, like the exit velocities have been really good. He's still making use of his speed when he's on the base paths. He's stealing a bunch of bases. He seems to be like, just like in good spirits regardless of all this. It doesn't seem like he's worried too much himself, which helps, the fan have confidence in him as well. And I feel like once he hits that first homer, like the floodgates are just going to open. I don't know when that's going to be. Like, it could be today as we're podcasting and we'll look really silly.
Could be any minute, yeah.
Or it could be, in like 2 or 3 weeks. But I feel like that whenever it happens, like I feel like whether he knows it or not, that's probably like a monkey that's just gonna be off his back, and just like a relief that he's gonna feel. And I feel like that's gonna do a lot for him, because I feel like there's a lot of pressure on him to hit that first homer, and whether it's conscious or not, I'm sure it's there. So I'm excited for when that happens.
That's something that I said in the Slack, is that, he is working good counts, and when he gets into good counts, he's letting it rip. Like letting off some really violent swings, and he doesn't need to. He's strong. Like he's a really strong guy. He doesn't need to really compensate. He maybe can, up the swing intensity a little bit, but he already puts good swings on the ball, regardless, just because of the hitter that he is. So yeah, I tend to think that once he gets one and he starts turning around, it'll kind of snowball. I also think it's interesting that even with the start through 15 games and 62 PAs, Zips and Steamer they both think he's still an above average hitter, and that he's going to be about 3 WAR rest of the season. The Bat X is less optimistic, but thinks he's about a league average hitter nonetheless.
It seems like the Bad X has been pretty reactive to a lot of these early returns from a lot of players, based on what I've seen.
That's kind of the nature of it, I would say. Zips and Steamer they're ultra conservative, which is what makes them not very interesting to me. Like, they're, like we've talked about before, they're kind of after like 50th percentile outcome type things, whereas the Bad X is more willing to change and take in new information. So I tend to like the Bad X more than the others, at least for hitters, especially because it takes in StatCast data and the others do not. But a league average bat from Julio with his speed and fielding is really valuable, especially when Jarred Kelenic was supposed to be our center fielder.
Real quick, statistics aside, this is a Sabermetrics Analytics podcast. Thank you to our Twitter fans who pointed out that this is the case. But just like on a human and on an entertainment watchability level for this team, Julio fucking rules, right? Like, the fact that every day we get to watch this team and watch Julio at bats. I felt yesterday that off day more than I have felt any off day in what feels like an era, because there was no Julio Rodriguez in my life. And I could feel it. I could feel it like 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, like, shit, like I need to go be looking for a Julio at bat right about now. And it wasn't there. And you can get lost in the numbers sometimes being a fan of this sport. And I think especially when I look at like the way people react to the small sample sizes of the first 16 games, just have fun right now with Julio. Julio is a blast. Julio is the most fun, the most charismatic Mariner we've had in an era. And just, I'm trying to remember as much as possible to enjoy the ride and to enjoy the journey as much as the destination, because so much of what's fun about this is getting to talk about Julio, getting to watch Julio, getting to see how his teammates react to him. I'm just loving it. And I wasn't sure if we were going to be here yet. You know, we all thought that Julio was going to go to AAA. They're going to have Billy Hamilton or somebody much less fun. No shade to Billy Hamilton, but like I'm so happy Julio is here and we get to watch him right now. Question for you guys. So we're about an hour in. We've only talked about the hitting so far. We haven't done any pitching.
I was just gonna say.
I think we can do one of two things. One is that we could wrap this here because the game is about to start and do another podcast where we dig into the pitching, because I think it is a very different discussion, both because they've actually kind of pitched well but have underperformed metrically, and I think there's a lot to dig into there. We're the number one team by WAR based on offense, and I want to say 22nd as of yesterday in pitching WAR. So there's a huge conversation there. I could very easily talk to both of you guys about that for 2.5 hours. So what do you guys think? Do we want to do a shallow dive right now on the pitching, just talk about it a little bit, or do we want to wrap it here for today, watch the Mariners game, and maybe come back tomorrow or even this weekend and do a second pod and talk about the pitching so far?
I do think we owe our listeners a second pod this week.
Yes,
agreed.
I think we're probably itching ourselves to pod again. I'm open to chatting for a couple minutes, or I'm happy to end it now and we can watch some nerves and and come back to it later in the week. Especially, I guess we do have a bit of an outline, but either way,
it's kind of funny the Mariners are now appointment television, but I feel that way too. It's like let's watch the game and then we'll come back and dive, because I feel like starters and bullpen, there's a lot of guys that are worth discussing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I know we're all available tomorrow anyway, because we were planning on doing the podcast tomorrow. Do we want to just do kind of the same thing tomorrow, 5 o'clock or whatever, and talk about the pitching? Because I would do it now, but my thought is if we legitimately start talking about that, this is going to be a 3-hour podcast where we dig into how we feel about Marco and Robbie Ray and just the whole 9 yards. It is a thing.
And we get to talk about Logan Gilbert.
Yeah. Who you called, Mikey. How smart do you look right now? This is your big thing with 538, Logan Gilbert. Like, let it not be said there's no expertise on this podcast. So,
I'm a genius.
Any other final thoughts today before we watch some Julio? Because I'm excited to watch Julio. I'm not gonna lie, I'm very excited to watch Julio. So.
I'm excited to watch us play the Rays. I think it's going to be, it's important to see how we do against good teams, and the Rays are nothing if not a good team.
Mm-hmm. Perhaps the smartest team in the league. So, any final notes from either of you guys today?
No, good.
Nah.
All right. Well, I'm Evan. You can find me on Twitter at Evan James Audio. You can find Mikey on Twitter at Kuya Mikey. You can find Anders on Twitter at Anders Jorstad. You can find the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, wherever it is you stream. Additionally, please support the podcast on Patreon by going to patreon.com/NeverSunnyInSeattle. I'm also going to link that on the video at the end here if you wanted to click that and follow it. Thanks for listening. Go Mariners. Go watch some Julio. You never know how long it's going to last in any configuration. And right now, Jarred Wonderchild and Julio Wonderchild are both on this team hitting in the bottom of the lineup. Treasure it, guys. Just watch the team. It's so much fun right now. Anyways, thank you. We'll see you in a couple days.